because he basically tried to set you up to fail, to try to teach you a lesson about how tough things can be, and then you prevailed.
Let's fight failure together. We can defeat 90.
I want to hear your story. Tell me where entrepreneurship began for you.
Yeah, so like watching my dad growing up, he's like an ambitious man. He's always kind of had a bunch of projects going, but he went from basically doing the export business like I did, and then he was a school counselor for a little bit. He's been like a college professor. He's coached a soccer team. He's been kind of all over the place. So growing up watching that, I assumed that was the default mode, that like a man just always has, 4 or 5 pans in the fire. And then my grandpa...
That's a lot to live up to.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, and then, my grandpa kind of did the same thing where he was a preacher, but then he would go on the missions trips. He did like building stuff. He started a company called like RVers. That was a missions thing where they went around the country in RVs and stuff. And he always told me you have your one main thing and then everything else sits on top of it. So I kind of went into it thinking like that. And then with the business that I got started in, my dad used to have me sweep the warehouse for $5 an hour. We'd like sweep the warehouse, go clean the gutters, pop all the leaves in bags, throw them away and stuff.
Disclaimer, this is not child labor law stuff here. This is kids. So
yeah, it was babysitting. I know we're going to have benefits,
some people, we have some in comments and stuff like that.
So going from that, that was like an actual early example of like time being traded for money.
Yeah.
And then when I had my first like retail sale, which came years later, and I realized that this is just me buying something cheaper and selling it for more and having the margin. And I made, what I would have made in 10 hours of sweeping, $50. I was like, this makes more sense to me. I was like, I can figure this out and work harder and multiply it. But I like the idea of it not being concrete. Because sometimes, it's like no matter how hard I work today, there's only 8 hours in the day, I'm going to make the $40. But going in and knowing that, this could be a bad day or this could be a good day, but it's dynamic and it's changing based on the effort I put in, and I'm not like boxed in.
How old were you when you had that lesson?
Like 13.
So I mean, arguably, do you think it was your dad's like actual idea that this would to change that thought? Like, was that like his idea, or did you actually just like click at 13?
Yeah, no, I definitely came up with the idea myself, but with him, I mean, he does Mr. Miyagi type stuff, so it very well could have been planned.
Okay, one of my favorite stories though about this, just kind of in that same vein, about digging the fence.
Yeah. So one of my earliest partners, his name was Luke Hansen. He's went on to do great things in business, but we were left at a rental property that my dad had. So he basically gave us like a metal stake and then one of these like claw type things that was basically a post digger, but it was solid rock. So like underneath the 1/2 inch of dirt was basically just shelf rock that you would have had to like blow through, where it should have been like professionally done. So we made a deal with him. We were going to get like a couple $100 each to put this fence in. And he dropped us off and left. And we didn't have a car or anything. The gas station was like a mile away. So we would go there to get drinks and like go to the bathroom and stuff. But he came back around lunchtime and we had like 5 or 6 posts done. And he was expecting us to get one hole. He thought we would do one hole and quit. And he wanted to see like if we could do this hard work before he gave us the actual job. And we exceeded his expectations, mainly because Luke is very competitive and whether he knew or not, he doesn't quit. So
that's interesting because he basically tried to set you up to fail.
Yeah.
To try to teach you a lesson about how tough things can be, and then you prevailed.
Well, yeah, we definitely, we got blisters on our hands and stuff like that. But then after that, he proposed the real business idea. So like going into it, we knew for sure we didn't want to do fences. Fences are hard.
Fences are hard.
I have a lot of respect for the fencing industry.
Oh, you guys out there that are, having fence companies, we have the respect for you. I did irrigation when I was I didn't have very many jobs. I always had businesses, but dear gracious, using a sharpshooter and digging holes, that's a job, man. They can so all the respect out there.
Yeah.
So as you're learning these lessons, you're 13, was it just like, I'm going to do business? Or was there a click inside of you that's like, I don't want to trade time and I want to own something? Or what was that initial point where you're like, I want to have my own thing?
Yeah, I definitely didn't want to trade time for money as far as like traditional employment. And then also I liked like the flexibility of it. Like when we got into sales, it was like we knew we had 8 to 10 orders that would go out in the day. And I'd wake up at like 8 or 9 on a summer day and I could basically text Luke and be like, hey, do you want to go in and ship now? And we get it out of the way and we have the rest of the day. Or like if you're going golfing or, you know, if I had like saxophone lessons or whatever, then we meet in the evening after dinner and we'll ship. And just like early on knowing that the flexibility of like the work has to be done, but it's not a concrete box.
Okay, so you're 13 years old, making okay. So let's fast forward a little bit because now you started a company with Luke. You're in high school, right? How much? I mean, how well are you guys doing with this thing?
So we were averaging like in high school about $800 a month, and I felt like I was like the richest man alive. Like at 800, and because I mean all expenses paid. Like I'm living with my parents still. So the first time I got the check, it was $800, and I took like 10 or 12 guys and girls to Buffalo Wild Wings, and because I'd always seen my dad like do this at different family functions or whatever, and I'd never taken the tab before, so I wanted to like take the tab,
have the experience. So
we go to Buffalo Wild Wings, and at the end of the night, like they're going to do the check and stuff, and I go, hey, it's all on me. It was like over $400. And then you have to tip on that on top of it, which I had forgot was a thing. So then, you not that I hadn't, I just had never paid at a restaurant. So you tip, and then I come home and I'm like, yeah, I just blew like half of my paycheck on one dinner, which they all thought was cool and stuff. But my dad's like, yeah, don't do that.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, what was the purpose?
So for you, when did you start kind of understanding the value of money? Do you feel like that was something you understood then, or is it something you learned later in life?
Well, we had a couple of check-ins. So this is like how it worked before we had figured out the business. Was the wholesale side of things is you would send it, and sometimes there would be like a poor check-in where like the product either didn't get approved or they didn't approve as much of it as they said on the invoice, and we would like lose, So then it's like basically what we had put into the product came back and it was less than that. So I realized at that point that there is like some level of risk to it. But then we also had months that were like big, So the ups and downs of it was basically that we have to, always be watching what we were buying and kind of almost have our finger on the pulse of the business. Like there is no true autopilot. Yeah.
That's something that, I mean, as we know, and at some point I want to have this conversation with you about passive income because, I mean, most of us have read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Right.
And this glowing thing of passive income, but like I just don't think it exists. Like I know it exists, but I think there's always that risk of you have to have the people managing people, benching people. I mean, there's always a thing, but we can talk about that another time. But passive income is one of those things that's like you're learning that lesson early on.
I believe it's a myth. Yeah.
Let's fight failure together. We can defeat 90.